Hello, everybody, and welcome to the BadMotoGP-Podcast. As you can see, I have a guest here who doesn't need any introduction, Simon Crafar from the MotoGP broadcast. Thank you very much for being here. I'm a very big fan of your work. I really enjoy watching you on TV or hearing you on TV, and also all the technical stuff you do afterwards with After the Flag. I really enjoy watching us. It gets me a lot of knowledge after the races, which prepares me for my almost weekly MotoGP show where I talk about what happened in the races. So thank you very much for being here, and let's start. How do you experience this MotoGP season in general? What's your emotion there?
Well, first of all, I'd like to apologise. I didn't realise we are going to use video. Otherwise, I would have had a shave. I'm on I'm on holidays, just hiking with the dogs and hanging with the family. So, this season is my. I think you asked personally from my experience, and this season is my sixth working for Dorna as pit lane reporter and some commentary. It is my favorite or most enjoyable season so far. That's from my point of view. And I think a big part of it is that last year they moved me. I got some practices, practice 2 in the afternoon on Friday and a lot of Saturday until the race, the sprint, in the box with Matt. And I'm really enjoying that because everyone will know after 5 years of doing the same job, you start to get bored doing the same things, even if it's as dynamic as MotoGP, doing the same thing every day gets boring, where this was a new challenge. I was afraid, to be honest. I was a little bit scared, no hiding in there with Matt. And I'm loving it. I'm having a really good time. Matt and I took a while to figure each other out. I think that's normal. And now it feels really comfortable. I'm enjoying a lot. And then the sprint added on Saturday, enjoyment side from me has been really good. There's Saturday's more dynamic. So from my side, I'm really enjoying that straight up. And I didn't expect that it would go up for my enjoyment so much. I thought that I was starting to get bored, and it's fixed that.
I really enjoy the dynamic you talked about with you and Matt, because I would consider you not like a traditional commentator. You're more of an expert, because since you raced and you even rode the MotoGP bikes like the KTM and the Ducati you rode, right?
And the Aprilia, yeah.
And the Aprilia, right.
Yeah.
You are such an expert on modern stuff, but also have all the experience of your personal career. So I really think that enhances the MotoGP broadcast a lot. And I'm a bigger fan of you and Matt in the commentary than Matt and Louis Salabai, because when you watch, for example, I watch a lot of UFC, or when you watch the NBA, when you watch the NFL, they always have this pairing of a commentator with an expert or an ex-player. And I think that works really well, because you always have some insight that probably not a lot of people have. And it's a very, very good listen. So thanks for all the commentary.
I really appreciate the guy, Ruben, maybe I won't say his surname, but the guy that hired me originally, this was his plan. He saw that in the future it would be great, instead of having 3 journalists, meaning a journalist in a pit lane and 2 in the commentary box, to have one of them as a rider, an ex-rider. And he went on this mission to try to find somebody who's willing to learn how to be a journalist, which is not easy to find someone that wants to do this, wants to travel and hats off to him to think of the idea and try to make it work. It wasn't easy at the beginning. People that watched it my first year would know that it was a struggle to try to, like any trade, I did a motorcycle apprenticeship, 5 years. My first year, I was a disaster, I knew a lot from motocross, building my own bike and 2-stroke stuff, but then to learn 4-stroke stuff, I had I knew nothing. I was 15 years old. In the first year, it took 2 years to learn the trade, to stop making mistakes. And then you start becoming a good, and I think it was the same process. It took 2 years of mistakes and learning from them in this trade, to learn to be a journalist, to start improving, what I'm saying, to hold my own. And I think it's like any job. So.
Yeah. It's crazy when you compare it to today, where 15-year-olds in motorcycle racing, they don't work anything else but motorcycle racing, like
Yeah.
the Rookies Cup or the Junior GP. They're just straight races, and it's very incredible how it developed from like your day and age, where I didn't experience it live, but I've read a lot, I've seen a lot, where it just was more of an everyman sport. Not particularly just the rider, but also the teams who just can show up with the two strokes and have their own team. It was a lot cheaper, and now everything is so professional, and you see it in the youth category. It's incredible what these guys are doing.
Yeah, and one thing to add there is it's great, because they are so much ahead of where I was in the same age, racing wise. But at the same time, they have less chance to live a life and make the mistakes of, that I was free in another city in my teens doing the wrong things. And then it helped me realize I don't want to live like that. I want to chase the dream of being a professional rider. And the reason for telling you this is I think the decision and the commitment is stronger when you make the decision, after going the wrong way. And why I'm saying this is I feel sorry for some of the kids who have to decide whether they're going to be a professional or not before they even really know themselves,
Yeah. I mean, Casey O'Gorman, for example, he's like 13 years old. He's a good talent, but when I was 13 years old, I didn't have the discipline. I just was a teen who just did whatever he wanted, and my mom had some problems with me back then, and it's got to be hard to be a professional at this age.
Exactly. That's what I was meaning.
And also, you kind of set an example where we talked about the UFC or the NFL, where ex-athletes can pursue a career after their actual career. And I think this is missing a little bit, at least in international broadcasting from motorcycle racing. In Germany, we have Alex Hofmann, who raced as well, and he's doing a phenomenal job. And yeah, Stefan Bradl is also commenting. I don't necessarily like him too much. I don't know him personally, but just his personality doesn't excite me. He's
He's
like,
good to speak to one-on-one about
yeah,
technical stuff. Yeah, I enjoy talking to him about that, but I
yeah,
don't
but
know him well
like
socially.
from a TV perspective, he isn't the most
Understand.
entertaining
Okay.
guy. And
Maybe he needs that 2 years that I had,
yeah,
of making mistakes.
maybe he will be fun to listen to one day. And I think we should, for example, like Cal Crutchlow, he did this video with Jack Miller back in the day where they were commenting on Jack Miller's pole lap in Argentina, I believe.
Was
It
fantastic.
was so good. I would like to hear it every weekend, and it's
So
incredible. And
real,
yeah,
and they know each other so well.
yeah.
It was
And
great.
also, I assume it's difficult when you are like 30, 35. When did you retire? How old was you when you
I think
retired?
it's 30, 31, something like this. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm 25 now. When I imagine in 5 years, you have your whole life ahead, but
Mhm.
like your actual job is kind of over, what you did the past 30 years, it's got to be difficult to decide what do you do next. And we saw Jorge Lorenzo trying to pursue a little bit of being a test rider, being a journalist. And I don't know where that necessarily went since I don't follow Spanish broadcasting too much. But yeah, it's got to be difficult, and I think it's beautiful that we have people like you or like Alex Hofmann or even Stefan Radl who set an example for riders who don't end their career as millionaires who never have to work again and just be able to provide a value for fans and also do what they know and do what they love in a
Mm.
different way.
Like I said, I did my apprenticeship as a bike mechanic. I knew what it was like to go to work, pay rent, do the normal, pay your bills. And I think, well, when I retired, it feels like such a hole in your life that is really difficult. And it's difficult not to get depressed. I didn't know what depression was. I'm quite happy, but I believe for the next 3 years, I was dipping in and out of would be I didn't get it diagnosed officially, but I believe looking back that I was depressed in this period because you're kind of lost, you lose the main goal is gone, so, and like I said, I had a normal life before racing. I can imagine with these kids that don't have a normal life, they don't even know what that was, then all of a sudden they have to do it. I imagine it's going to be harder.
Yeah. And also not just the money, you get all the intention, you kind of get used to it. Some people like it, some people don't. And then all of a sudden it's away. So then you see who's really your friend, I guess.
If this thing goes from being extremely busy, and when you retire, it's like, is it still working? I'm not kidding. So yeah, that's another part of it.
So you raced in the 500s, then you raced in World Superbike. What did you do after you retired? Until now?
Okay, Olin's technician directly after. I wanted to do that. I pursued that idea because I was mechanical trained, and enjoyed the mechanical side. I never stopped working on my own bikes, dirt bikes, enduro bikes. And so I said to the Olin's guys, I would like to, to do this. And they went, well, Matt's Larson, he's the boss of the race department, said, great idea, let's do it. So I got the training in Sweden with them and was a technician for Norikabe and Jose Luis Cardoso in 500s, 500 Yamaha, and 250 guys, Roberto Locatelli, and it's not coming. It'll come in a moment. I know it, Franco Battaini. He's now the Ducati. He replaced Randy, the two-seater. He rides the two-seater.
I've seen them on track when I attended a race live, but I never knew who was riding those.
Okay, well, Randy Moller and someone else used to do it. Now Battaini does it. Anyway, Franco, they were factory Aprilia riders. So I got 4 riders to look after in my first year, and I kept it all together and learned the job. And it was quite easy going from, I think a lot of the technicians go in, it's quite intimidating, because you got a rider in the huddle, an engineer who's like the crew chief, tire technicians, computer guy, imagine all these guys, the team manager, all in this huddle. I'd spent years already in there as a rider, so it was not so difficult to move sideways and I liked the job. I wanted to continue, but at that year, we also had our first child. And that was the main reason. I don't want to take all day on your podcast, but it was the main reason I bailed out on that. I'd already convinced Olins to give me the proper wage. I'd done my apprenticeship year, proven that I could do it. They agreed to pay me a proper, and then I realized if I signed this, my wife is in Andorra, where she's from New Zealand, same as me, with no support here, no family, with a brand new baby, which we'd done most of that my first year as with Olins. And I realized she was struggling. I was away all the time. If I sign, we might end up getting divorced, I don't want that. So I stopped and went a different way, and carried on being lost for a while. But what I'm saying is, great guys. I still really respect them a lot. The Olins crew, and Matt's still the boss there. Amazing guy. I in another situation, I could see me staying in that job for some years, but I'd made the right choice. I still have my wife and children. So.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. I mean, You have to have a family to come home to, and even if you love your job, if your personal life sucks, it will suffocate your job at the end. So
yeah,
bang on. Before we continue, you can talk my ears off today because I have nothing planned.
Okay.
Talk as much as you want. Regarding your wife, did you meet your wife in New Zealand, or was it coincidentally that you both were in Europe?
No, my last race in New Zealand, coincidentally, I met her. I'd convinced Yamaha Malaysia to loan me the bike that I'd won the championship for them in Malaysia on. And they said, yeah, we'll loan you the bike. I said, I will arrange the freight. I just want to do this international race in New Zealand. And then we send it back. And they actually let me do that. And I'm just thinking they'd let me do it the year before as well. But they let me do that. It was already sponsored by Marlboro and cigarettes back then in Malaysia. So I went to Philip Morris in New Zealand and said, look, we have all the kit, all the bikes, everything. We're going to do this race already in your colors. Do you want to help us with the freight, to get the bikes here and back? Will cost about this. We did the deal, and little did I know, they went, let's do a little more, and we'd get some promotion girls to come. So umbrella girls. So the one of the ones they sent, I ended up marrying. So, yeah, it was obviously a long story to there, but yeah, I was lucky that this happened.
Yeah,
So,
cigarette sponsorships aren't as bad at the end, I guess.
yeah, it was quite healthy for my life. Yeah.
Yeah. You talked about New Zealand a little bit, and I talked with Remy about it. I talked with Joel Kelso about it, their way from Australia to Europe, and it was very different for both of them. And even those, I believe, like 7 years apart, they are, is such a huge difference. So, how did you experience like growing up in New Zealand and then entering the GP scene in Europe?
I imagine mine's completely different to theirs as well. Um, I to get out of New Zealand, a man called Murray Carter. He owned a big clothing company. Loved motorcycle racing. He just because I know him very well now, because he's such a good-hearted person. He likes to help the young guys. He bought me my first ticket out of New Zealand, and that was to go to Japan. He obviously liaised with the team in Japan, got me there for one ride. I managed to keep them happy. Suzuka 8 Hour. Can you imagine turning up from New Zealand to Suzuka 8 Hour, never ridden on slick tires, never ridden on superbike, and never ridden on a proper circuit. And I turned up to Suzuka. It was mind-blowing experience. And I did well enough that the Japanese team gave me the job till the end of the year. They said join for the last races of the season. So half the season. And the end of the year, they let me and my teammate, he was a Kiwi as well, Andrew Stroud, take the machines back to New Zealand and race each other in New Zealand on these machines, OW01 Yamahas, beautiful. I managed to win the championship in New Zealand against him, and then we sent the bikes back, and they didn't race anymore. So he went. He's a big Yamaha dealer. He went boat racing because Yamaha Marine, and so that was kind of the end of bikes in Japan. I went, what should we do? I was. This story gets deeper, but I think it's worth listening to. Is the race director Mike Webb? He was a racer in New Zealand, but 10 years older than me, and he was just trying to help me because my racing had stopped, and I knew him from the track, and he said, "Hey, you haven't got a ride at the moment. You might as well come and finish your apprenticeship, motorcycle mechanic apprenticeship." He contacted the apprenticeship board and re-registered me that I'm starting again. I only had something like less than a year to go, of my 4.5 year apprenticeship. And so I worked for him in the workshop. It was a farming community, so mainly farm bikes, which I knew well from where I grew up. So while I was there, he goes, "What do you want to do?" I've got to get back out of New Zealand to race, And he helped me put the letters together to send them out. He asked me, "Where do you want to send them? What do you want to say?" And he put them together because I left school quite early. I couldn't even put a letter together, really. And he typed it up for me. It was faxes back then, not emails. And he's a good man, Genuinely, one of them replied, was Yamaha Malaysia. And all I said to them was like, give me one shot. I'll show you what I can do. I don't want anything except an air ticket and somewhere to sleep, And that was more or less what I said to them. They said yes. That one ride turned into a year and a half. I rode for them, and then they helped me, send me the bikes to New Zealand, where I met my wife. But I had to get out. Once I'd won the championship there, you have to keep going forward. So I had an offer to go to UK. It was a private guy I'd met in New Zealand. He came to New Zealand to race, and he said to me over a beer after a race one day, he said, I think you can mix it in with the boys in the UK. So I said, yeah, great, but how do I get, what bike? He said, ride mine. Come on, So I bought my ticket, some tyres, and took a bag of racing gear and 500 pounds, I remember, I got changed, and went to the UK and did 2 races on him and his mechanic's bike. And that got me a job, believe it or not, for 92, which was the year after, with Honda UK in the UK. So he was right. They thought I could mix it with the boys in the UK. And then I did 1 year in the UK, which was a great experience because I didn't ask. I took the first offer money-wise that they said. I just said, look, I don't want more money. I want more World Championship races. So they had 1 World Superbike race. I said, I want 3 World Superbike races because that was my goal, to get to World Championship. And they went, okay, yeah, we'll do that. I ended up doing Donington. Spa was the last year Superbikes raced at Spa, 92. And they loaned me, I think to save money, during these first 2 races. I met Rumi, Oscar Rumi and them. We shared a garage together because it was both Hondas, And my team manager loaned me to Rumi for 1 race, which was in Austria, the old Zeltweg before they cut it in half, It was amazing. So the old A1 ring before it became A1 ring. And so this was good for everybody. I got my race. My team manager didn't have to pay to go to a race because he just loaned me. And this team got a rider for free. You know what I mean? So everyone was happy. And it went very well, meaning qualified 7th and got 2 top 10s, And I'm talking against my heroes. So I was literally over the moon. It was the first time I felt like, you know what I'm saying? I was getting somewhere, It was amazing experience because they were literally my heroes, The guy's bike I was riding was Fred Merkel's bike the year before, and I qualified ahead of him. He was riding for Yamaha, and I'm like, holy shit, I'm going to make it, because until then it's kind of a dream, you hope. But I realized I can make it. So then end of that year, Honda UK said, there's Neil Tuxworth and Bob McMillan, I remember, was the big boss of Honda in the UK, and they gave me a deal. I remember it was a function with Joey Dunlop, who was riding the roads for them back then. Anyway, they gave me a deal. It was like 3 times the money and company car, and to ride again the following year. They were going to get an RC. It was a special bike from Honda because there was no new Honda. Anyway, RVF from Japan. And believe it or not, I think it's one of the moves I'm most proud of my whole career. I sat there and I went, no. And they were like, why? And I'm like, I'm going World Championship. And they went, oh, have you got a deal? And I went, no. And they went, Simon, this is a pretty good deal. And I went, I know, but I know me. If basically I'm bored, I have to go World Championship. If I get bored, I will drink and chase girls and not focus on the job, I said that to them, and they went, how could they argue, They went, fair enough, So I just focused on that, had no job till March the next year, nothing, sitting in New Zealand, and the phone rings and Peter Graves says, do you want to ride a 500 Yamaha Harris? in World Championship. Come to Europe, you won't get paid anything, but you can sleep in the truck. And I went, perfect. Like anything World Championship, I was going to say yes to. And it was the lowest budget team in the paddock. 2 sets of tyres new per race weekend. So you had to ride on the old stuff until the last moments of qualifying, fire the new set in, do the time, use that for warm up, and a new set for the race. That was how, it was super low budget. Good people. To Debbie Irvine, a woman, only woman mechanic I've had before. Took me a while to get my head around that. And she was really good, like really good. I feel sorry for her because I didn't trust her in the beginning because I'd never seen a woman working on a car or a bike, and I didn't mean to be prejudiced, but I knew my mum and my sister couldn't, but she was good, really good, and we're still friends now. So, and the other guy was great as well. So that part was good. On my 4th ride on that bike, you're talking new tracks. I didn't know the bike, how to set it up. 500 two-stroke. I was trying not to let it hurt me. And the 4th race on it was Essen, and I got 9th. So top 10 in 500 World Championship. And that got me a job with Tech 3, Hervé Poncharal, for the rest of the year. Because the bike I was riding, I had to find something else because the thing was over mileage crankcases. The mechanics told me, they didn't own the team. They said, if the cases go, they're already over mileage. They're magnesium. If they crack, we haven't got the money to replace them. It means I don't know what we're going to do, So I wouldn't have a truck to sleep in or a bike to ride. So the Hervé thing was perfect. Like came along. I was too big for 250. I knew that, but I had to say yes to the next opportunity, which taught me a lot because his crew, Guy Coulon, was my crew chief. They taught me a lot and was amazing. And I got $2,500 a race and a motorhome to live in, a little European camper, so I could ring my wife now, my girlfriend, come over. We had a home, and I finished the 93 season like that. It was amazing. Then it turned into full-time jobs because from then on in World Championship.
At least you learned how to ride on used tires and probably learned to not crash ever. Because I assume if you crashed once, the whole ship was going to sink.
No, they had fairings and stuff, but
like a real crash where you wrecked the chassis or
I see
something.
what you mean. Yeah, you're right. It was a different world, but that's the world that I think it's really good that it's changed to the point. It's one good thing for the sport that the level now right across the field is really good. Basically they're all factory bikes out there now, where when I was riding there was like Kevin Schwantz and Mick Doohan and Alex Barris and all on beautiful machines with proper teams, and there's me with a truck, 2 mechanics and 2 sets of tires, which is I don't think right for a world championship level, Fair enough if it's European championship or something, but this is world championship.
Yeah, but it had to be a very wild ride to not know where you're going to end up at the end of the year, probably,
or where you're going to sleep.
Yeah,
because I had no home, no car, no telephone, I just had 2 bags, and then hope somebody takes me home for the next week, between race, or how can I get to the next, was like that. And when you look back after doing something like that, it's one of the best periods of my life. It's amazing, and also the period where my wife and I just had the camper, and we still laugh. We have things like coffee cups from Italy, from cafes, because we didn't have anything to put in the camper. The knives and the forks were steel back then on the plane. We had knives and forks from the plane in our camper. So this period, though, it's like I said, we made some of the best memories. So
yeah, and it probably bonds you together in a way where
exactly.
Right now she's a ride or die. If she supported you in the worst years there,
Exactly.
she was going to support you whatever happens.
Fingers crossed that. Yeah, but you're dead right. I've already broken my back and been in hospital in Romania, and she's been through all that, and me not being able to walk for 11 months and burning all the cash that we had in the bank, trying to run everything while I couldn't work for 11 months. So she's been through all that as well. Well tested. She's amazing.
I had an interesting conversation with Remy over the winter, where we talked a lot about like ride height devices. We talked about wings and all of this. And he said something which really surprised me. He said, get rid of wings. I agree. He said, get rid of ride heights. I agree. But he also said, get rid of electronics. And this kind of shocked me because electronics are like a huge safety part of modern MotoGP or motorcycle racing in general, because back in the 500 days, you saw high siders all the time. Mm-hmm. And it kind of surprised me. And he said, they are the best riders in the world. They should ride the most savage motorcycles in the world. And I would like to hear your opinion of it. Since you raced an actual 500, you know what it's like. And you also know what it's like to race MotoGP bikes now. You've ridden 3 manufacturers. And what do you make out of this? Is this really a good idea, or is this maybe a little bit too dangerous?
And I really understand where Remy's coming from. And he's saying that because he's looking at it from a sports point of view, but from a sportsman's point of view, a sportsperson's point of view. And that those things that he's saying get rid of, the wings, the devices, the electronics, are the things that make the sport not on an equal playing field, you know? And because some of the brands have better electronics, some of the brands have better wings and aero, and some have the better devices, you know? And also that they all take away from the fight of trying to keep the bike in control, you know? And so what he's saying is he's confident that he can outride a guy on the same playing field, you know? And I understand that it is. I'm not saying that it's the right way to go, but I totally understand why he's saying it. You know, he just doesn't want to line up and know that he's not got the same kit as he has. You know, he just wants roughly the same, because electronics, they are such a big part of it now that the riders have been telling me for years that they spend more time getting the electronics right than even bothering with the chassis setup, because they said there's bigger gains there. And I mean, it's nuts. So they just have the chassis in the ballpark, focus on getting the electronics right, because there's not enough time to do both. And I mean, so what you understand, you know, some teams, manufacturers have bigger budgets. They have the best electronics guy. You know what I'm saying? And then, you know, you're up against that. And electronics are a rider aid. It to me is like, it's like using illegal aids in other sports. You see what I mean? It's like, and when it's like that, it's not a fair fight, you know? So I totally understand what he's saying. Dorna have done their best to, you know, what is it? I've forgotten the proper word now. Has it come when they had the same hardware for everyone? They've got a name for it.
The ECU?
Yeah, basically the same ECU, but they've got a name for it. It's one ECU for everybody, you know, and then you can rewrite what you have on it. But the thing is, the guys are so clever that they get this thing doing whatever they want with time, and you know what I mean? And the others haven't figured out that. So it comes back to the haves and have-nots again. And so that's the way I see it anyway. And the wings, incredible. Like I didn't want them on there anyway. I thought they look ugly. They're making the have and have-nots problem more. Then I rode Mugello on the Aprilia. You know, I only got one flying lap, which was a shame, but I got to go 2 times down the front straight, flat out. And every bike I've ridden there, I love that section. The last fast chicane, the last corner, because the last fast chicane it's really fast. Like you're talking third gear and clicking fourth on the way out, which is quick. There's not many chicanes like that. It takes real skill, bravery. It's even making my hair stand up talking about it, to hit the right spot, get everything right, get through there fast without losing the front on the way in or high siding on the way out. Then the last turn and getting a run onto the front straight, and that front straight over the brow. Every bike I've ridden there, someone's cleaning up, or
You are hearing the dogs. The dogs
okay,
joined.
good. I thought that was going to be me, but it's so hot. Mine are asleep.
No, I know you like
Yeah.
some dogs, and here this is Peanut. This is our dog, and it's her birthday today. I know you like dogs, and you do a lot of
I love
dog
dogs.
charity.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to show
Introduce.
my appreciation for this little girl because it's her third birthday today.
Cool.
She got some snacks, and we went for a little walk, had some excitement today.
Excellent.
And I just wanted to show you Peanut. Peanut, say hello. Hello.
Awesome. That's great, mate.
Mine.
I thought mine were going to disturb, but it's so hot today that they are sleeping on the tiles.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, actually, she manages quite well with the heat and her fur. I expected it to be worse this summer, but because the flat is quite cool, we can. Oh, wait a second! I'll put her down.
Good to meet you, Peanut. Oh, another one.
Another one. This is the dog of
he
my
looks
girlfriend's
old.
parents.
She looks old.
Yeah,
quite
she's
old.
she's 10, right?
Yeah,
she's 10, and she's wet. What did you do? Take
cooling
a
her
shower?
down?
Yeah, she took a shower, so that's why she's so wet. She was probably a bit stinky.
I got mine with the garden hose just before to let them cool down.
Yeah. Wait a second. Can you take her? Okay. So
down the front straight.
Yeah.
You come over a brow, and that brow, it's a blind brow, and you have to go right by the pit lane exit and lean over because it's also to set you up for the braking to be in the right position, but leaning over gives you less wheelie. So you're trying to lean over a bit and trying to stand on the foot pegs with your face in the screen, trying to keep as low and all the weight on the front to get less wheelie so you can hold the throttle. But as it comes up over that brow, you wheelie and you have to roll back a bit, and you're doing a wheelie at over 300 kilometers an hour, standing on the pegs. It's like the most exciting section of track I've ever ridden. It's unbelievable good. And then I rode it with the wings, and I went, oh my God, it was so easy. The bike was bolted to the road, So the wings, the difference, it's what made me realize it made that section where you have to fight and takes real skill to keep in control, keep the throttle open. It made it that anybody can ride it. It was safe, easy, So they're amazing, and you can look at that in two ways, like you're taking the skill away, or we're making some real progress. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what is the right answer, but yeah, it was an incredible difference,
Yeah.
Basically, one you're flying, and the other one you're bolted to the road.
Yeah.
Just fixed to the road.
Yeah, I mean, I read an article today where you talked about your experience on the GP22 in Misano, and it appeared to me like the sense is this bike was easy to ride, and you were so positive, and I mean, when I think about MotoGP bikes, I think about 300 horsepower beasts where everything is like on the edge of technology. What's available at the moment and what's allowed within the regulations. But it sounded like a bike. The way you wrote the article, it sounded like a bike where everybody can step on and have a quick lap because it
It's
was
true.
so easy to turn, so easy to brake. I mean, you talked about the rear tire when you braked a little too hard into turn one, and
That was
then the
probably the
rear,
most impressive thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then the rear came a little bit into the air, but it settled down so smoothly, and it was very different than I thought a MotoGP bike would be. You know?
I mean, that is the most beautiful bike I've ever ridden in my life. And first of all, I don't think it's fair to compare the other two MotoGP bikes because with the KTM and the Aprilia, I didn't get the real tires, MotoGP tires. So because normally you're not allowed, they're only allocated for tests for races. So they they had to put superbike tires on it, and the bike doesn't handle well with it. They're too soft construction wise. It's like the tire moves before the suspension, and because the less grip, they have to give you a dumbed down electronics. So you don't really get the real experience. You experience some of it, but not all of it. Where because I think I put it in the article, because the management of Ducati, they were in the paddock when I raced. They knew that I could ride it. So they went to the trouble of getting me the real tires from Michelin, asking for the one set for me. And Piero, I know Piero, he said yes, and I got to have the real electronics and the whole experience. So what I'm saying is you can't compare that to the KTM and the Aprilia, which was not the whole experience. So you can't compare. Um, so, but this thing was so good at everything, and that's. I knew it would be good, but it was even better than I expected, because it did everything without like. Too often I ride electronics and it holds it back, so you can't feel where the edge is because you would have felt that on street bikes, you can't feel the edge of the tire or what grip you have because the electronics come in before the tire lets go. So you don't know where you are. This did such a good job of feeling like it didn't have electronics. It only came in to rescue you or to make it after it had let go, and it did everything like that. It felt so um, analog, with even though it's quite the opposite, was amazing. They've done an incredible job. And what you said proves right. Everybody that gets on that bike just straight away goes fast, And even though they're totally different riders with totally different setups, they all can make friends with it. So Ducati have done an incredible job.
Yeah. Going back to the conversation I had with Remy, what he said is basically that nowadays you have to ride to make the electronics happy, you have to ride to make the bike happy, and then that's how you go fast. And he said he didn't really like this style of riding a bike a lot, and he said the World Superbike is a lot better in this sense. So how did you experience? What's your opinion on it with this short couple of laps that you rode to Ducati?
Um, I mean, first of all, the KTM has really made steps. Remy was on the KTM. It's really made steps this year.
Yeah.
And it's a shame Remy didn't get to try that because they have made big steps with the help of Jack and his guys with the electronics. I know they've made really good progress there. So maybe Remy would be happier with it. But they've made progress with aero, with the engine. The whole bike has come up. So maybe, I mean, there's a good chance Remy would make friends with this new one, because not everybody did with the old one.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. But then I know he would make friends with what I rode in Misano. That Ducati was. I mean, I got 6 laps. I I raced Misano the other direction, the opposite direction. So I
Yeah.
was a little bit lost at the end of the back straight, the fast section. Um, I said 3 laps. They said, "What do you want? If you have 6 laps, how do you want it?" I went, "Okay, 3 laps with Pero in front and 3 behind." Um, because I knew I needed to get some reference points for the area I didn't know. And in that 6 laps, I made 135s, the last laps. And I mean, fast is, fast, it's like 132, isn't it? With race tires or like very fast, the fastest. And it just gives you an idea of how good this bike is. I'm 54 years old. I was 53 then. I'm unfit. The thing is amazing, and I'm positive that Remy with the new KTM or riding this would have a different outlook.
Which KTM did
Sorry,
you ride?
I have to say, oh no, that was 2 years ago. So yeah. The other thing is I understand what he means. Basically, to put it really simply, the superbikes really feel like they turn and they do everything easier, and the GP bikes make so much time in acceleration and in braking that they've made the bikes longer. This is a generalization, longer and lower with the wings in there, and they don't feel as nice, as user friendly, but they're designed in a way that you can decelerate at a crazy speed that wins you so much time, and then accelerate at a crazy speed that wins you so much time. It adds up to worth more than the nice handling, feeling, and turning in the other areas. That's a rough explanation. Hey, my boy's just come to see me. Maybe you want to meet him. Hey, buddy. You
Oh,
come to say hello. I know. Look,
hello.
he wants his. Oh no, he's going to harass me. He wants his food.
He's a little bit. He's a little bit harder to handle than Peanut.
Yeah. I might have to ask my wife if you guys would excuse me for a moment.
Yeah, don't worry. Don't worry.
He's protesting. No.
What's
He's
his
telling me
name?
he wants his cookies. His name's Finn.
Finn. That's beautiful.
Finn. Yeah. I think, here they all come. So this is dinner time. Sorry that you've got me at dinner time. My wife's coming with the other two, and he's going to get his cookies, and then he'll be quiet. So
But he's
anyway,
super beautiful.
He is.
He sounds like a husky. Is there some husky in it?
You're right how he looks, but he's
Yeah.
actually a Czech wolf dog.
Oh.
Just quickly, the history that I read about is apparently the Czech military guarding the border. The old border that used to be there. Bred the German Shepherd with Carpathian wolf, and they kept doing this till they got the mix enough dog to be trainable, but keep the size and strength of the wolf, to make him so intimidating, big. But he's a big cuddle puss. He's like
Yeah. That's often the case that like the big dogs. I mean,
it's like people, no? Like
yeah,
people.
like the big dogs, they're usually a little bit more friendly, and the small dogs, like for example, the dog my girlfriend just closed the door, so she's outside and harassing me to let her in. She's just screaming on the door. I don't know if you hear her,
No.
but it's normal business here that the dogs interrupt. So, and when I'm at my mom's place, then my cat interrupts. So everything's normal here with the animals. They're allowed to interrupt as much as they want.
Yeah, fine. I'll just show you the other two. Hucky boy, come here, buddy. Come here. This is Hucky. Hucky. Oh, he's really focused on the cookies. Come here. No, he's focused on the cookies. Hucky boy.
Hello.
Hey, buddy. Oh, no, look, he's looking at Mama and the cookies. There's no distracting him. He's hungry.
Is an Australian Shepherd?
Border Collie.
Yeah.
He's my daughter's dog, but which makes it mine and my wife's also.
Basically the same.
Yeah.
It's not too far apart, right? Australian Shepherd and Border Collie. But they're so smart, right?
Incredible. He's wonderful. Mate, I love them all. But if somebody said to me, you're only allowed one dog, it would have to be a Border Collie. He's truly amazing. Like, they're clever as a monkey. Like, they look at you like that, trying to understand what you say, and he's so understand all the things you need to do. The only thing is you need a lot of exercise area, because he wants exercise. So
I will
not an apartment dog.
I will let the dog in and just quickly go to the toilet, and then I'll be back. I will pause the podcast, and I'll be
Okay,
back like in one
I'll
or 2
finish
minutes.
my
Okay.
iced coffee.
Okay.
Cool.
Perfect. Okay, we are back from our short little break. And regarding the whole topic with right-side devices, wings, I would like to ask you, if you had like infinite power, would you change this about MotoGP, or what would you change in general? Like
Oh,
if you were like the dictator of MotoGP and they had to do what you have to say.
I have to be honest, because I aren't in that position, I haven't thought well enough to answer you like I really believe, because there's always two arguments. Um, the thing is something that is coming clear is we're getting too fast for some circuits, and those circuits are wonderful, like the one I mentioned, Mugello, and if it keeps going faster, 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 then we're not going to be able to go to Mugello and maybe some others. Well, there is some others. And that would be sad, because to me, I don't want to end up just at, those tracks are so good to ride, from riders. All the riders love them, and you can't keep asking circuits to spend another million to move that or buy some land to make more gravel traps to. I think it's better to start restricting, for example, air intake size, so they can only make so much power because they can't get enough air fuel in there. Something like this in the future would probably have to happen. Otherwise, we're going to lose the beautiful tracks, which I think is too much to pay, Uh, you see what I'm saying? And not just beautiful tracks that we need on the calendar, That's how I see it. But when it comes to the wings, um, it's probably, I'm guessing, too late to ban them, to stop them. We've gone too far that way. They're on street bikes now, and they work. I mean, a couple of the street bikes I've ridden recently on track, they really work, And I mean, the devices aren't going to go to street bikes because, see, sweet, um, the you can't put a device on a bike and then sell it to the public, and if they hit it going into a corner and then can't turn and go in the railing and then sue the manufacturer, and it's too dangerous, Front maybe, for some. But what I'm saying is, okay, you could ban devices. You could, and it won't be a bad thing. I think the bikes are more safe off the line with the devices because you get less wheelie. But maybe just keep them for the start and don't use them off every acceleration point, And it also stops development money getting spent in that area, which is good. Get spent on, you know what I'm saying, other areas that are important that do filter through to the street bike market. I'm making it not a clear answer, but I'm just telling you the facts, because I don't know the clear answer. Wings, they could be reduced in size, so they have less effect on our sport, So they have to fit in here instead of here like they are now. You could do something like that, but I don't think you could ban them. There'll be, you know. The other thing, electronics. Oh, that is some serious hole, if we're going to go down talking about that. But really, I think personally, to keep everybody happy, when I say everybody happy, there is still electronics enough to keep the rider safe, but you don't have the haves and have nots. It shouldn't be just the hardware, it should be the software too. Everybody has the same, and you can just turn it up or down, whatever your rider preference, that sounds good to me because they spend crazy money on this. Personnel experts to basically bend the system to change it to what they want it to do. And in the end, it becomes an open war again, just finding a way around the system. Where to me, like in Moto2 or Moto2 has, you have a system, you can't play with it, you can just turn it up or down. Sounds pretty good to me, and you would literally save the manufacturer millions, and it would be a level playing field sport-wise, like Remy's talking about, but you would still have the safety functions in there. You can turn them up or down, your choice. That's how I see it. I hope I answered your question well enough without making it super easy.
Yeah, I mean, like the only exception, you are the dictator. You don't have to make anybody happy. You just have to do what you want in this scenario. No, but regarding the ride-height devices, I mean, I could see a scenario where, for example, the Superleggera from Ducati, where you can put this on a track-only bike, or like the RC213 VS Honda built years ago, like where you can do something for just track use.
Sure.
And not make it road legal. This would solve basically your problems there. But regarding electronics, I mean, isn't it the whole thing they wanted to avoid in 2016 when they introduced the spec electronics? And now we have a system where we feel, where you said like everybody's trying to bend the rules to their advantage.
It's not rules though. It's basically, this is the system, the hardware, but the guys are so clever. They can do what they want inside that still, and so it's, you know what I'm saying. They're so far. Basically, some of the teams are well ahead of the other teams, and then it becomes uneven.
Yeah, but basically that's what they wanted to avoid in 2016, and that's what Honda and Yamaha did, like during the CRT days. They had like this crazy electronics to make their 800 bikes work, and nobody else could compete with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we kind of need to rethink the whole electronic rule package, as you said. So I definitely agree with that. But also with the wings, I mean, we have new regulations in 2027. We could technically ban them. And we are now at a point where Aleix is like the best example for it. He can't overtake. I mean, the front tire of the Aprilia is apparently super vulnerable to like slipstream, and it overheats extremely fast. The Aprilia apparently doesn't have the best braking stability anyways, so Aprilia really suffers from it, which is very frustrating at times, because you see, like in Assen, Aprilia is pretty good there. Maverick was good until he crashed, but you just can't overtake on the thing, and therefore I think we need to improve this, like basically like F1
completely agree.
Because in
completely
2020
agree. But what I'm saying is, if you to try to ban them now, I'm trying to be practical, give a useful answer, not just get rid of them, because I don't think that's going to happen. So what I'm trying to say is, you could convince everybody to run smaller ones, which will have less effect, whether it's positive, and less effect negative, meaning they're not overtaking, disturbing it for everyone else, the air behind. I think that is a genuine possibility. That's what I'm trying to give you, something that could happen,
Yeah. Also, I don't want to be Michelin at the moment, where they produce the most spectacular tire basically ever built, but it's still not enough. And you need to have this amazing amount of grip that MotoGP tires have at the moment. But at the same time, you need this big operating window. When the tire gets too hot, it's not working anymore. So they need to increase the operating window while keeping the performance of the tire, which is also basically a very unrealistic task.
I mean, their rear tire is really amazing.
Yeah, the rear tire is good,
to
but
the
like
point,
the front tire is the big problem at the moment. With the operating window.
The rear tire is so good that it's actually, to me, made the race less good to watch, because you can go hard out the whole way almost. I mean, that's not completely true, but I mean, you can go very fast for the whole distance, which means the bikes go further apart. A perfect example was one of the best races last year is Phillip Island, wasn't it? It was an amazing race to watch because that track is so hard on the rear tyre that nobody can go for it from the beginning. They have to nurse, and everybody's too scared to run because you'll use too much tyre and then streak backwards. So the group stays together. And then we get this amazing race with people trying to fight without using too much rear tyre all the way to the last 2 laps go. And then there's another fight with the last bit of rubber that's left. But what I'm saying is that's a perfect example of if the tyre was less good, you would get a proper fight at more places. But the amazing tyre that gives incredible grip and also incredible life makes the field spread out because they can go more at their own pace. And you know what I'm saying? It's more real, but it's less good to watch, you know. So, and the front problem is adding to it, you know. If you can't overtake, if you've got front locking because the pressure's gone up, to do with wings and also to do with the crazy heat that comes off those bikes. I don't know if you heard me explain it in commentary in Germany, but the heat. Some people doubt about this tire temperature. I even had a guy I raced against contact me in World Superbikes. He contacted me and said, "I can't believe this temperature thing. They're making something out of it bigger than it is." And I'm like, "No, buddy." I took half an hour to convince him, but he was convinced in the end with the details. Like these bikes produce so much power now that they're producing so much heat as well, you know, like they used to be 200 horsepower, now they're 300, say, you know, and that 300 horsepower is making so much crazy heat coming off the bike that following one, I had a rider tell me in Sachsenring last year that he was further back. Remember, it was a heat wave. Sachsenring was 30 something degrees,
Yes.
30, really hot. He said further back on the grid, the first 2 laps were unbearable. There was so much heat coming off the whole. He said that's the problem. When you got one bike in front, it's one. But when that hot air gets heated up again and you're behind multiple bikes, one of the manufacturers told me that they had a registered temperature from a air intake, because they have a sensor in there to compute everything, 84 degrees in the first 2 laps at Sachsenring's race 2022. 84 degrees. So the riders are getting that, like 84 degrees on them. The front tire is, you know, and then that makes the temperature go up, which means the pressure goes up, little contact patch, and then locking, the guys have to back off. And that's why you see them drop back to get enough cool air and then have another attack, you know, and try and get by before overheating the front. But an overheated front means you're riding around all of a sudden with a lower level of front grip and really easy to crash, lock the front or lose the front, take away a lot of confidence. Anyway, I don't want to go too far down any road because I'll keep you here all night.
I don't care. I mean, we can go down every rabbit hole we want. And regarding the Sachsenring, I mean, Stefan Radl in Germany, he suffered some burnings on his. I don't remember if it's his hand or his boot. I believe it was his boot.
His foot, right foot.
Yeah, from the exhaust, I believe.
Yeah,
and
Paul Espargaro as well.
Yeah, Paul Espargaro as well. And
both Honda guys.
They even wrapped the isolation tape around the exhaust to kind of minimize the effect, let's say. But it's incredible how hot this must have been. I mean, if you suffer burns through leather, it's got to be a lot.
Yeah. I mean, the ones we used to get as Suzuki 8 Hour is from conducting, you know, like the engine heats the chassis heats the foot peg, and then when you're on the bike a long time, Suzuki 8 Hour, you know, for an hour at a time and then have an hour off an hour, that heat comes through your boot and leaves a blister about golf ball size on the sole of your foot just from slowly cooking it, you know. And but these bikes producing much more heat, and the heat coming from behind the fairing past the clutch. The guys say after the start, that next lap is burning hot heat coming off the clutch because it's literally glowing, the heat coming off. So between the clutch and the exhaust and engine, the hot air, and the foot peg conducting the heat, those boys just got their foot roasted. So I did a little bit of digging, and they cut back the fairing. We saw that, around the clutch to let the air out before directing it straight, before the fairing came all the way back pretty much over the clutch, and then the foot's here. So they cut it right back so the air could get out before going straight on to focused on the foot. And then they noticed that the bike was more agile because of the smaller surface area on the side of the bike. The bike might be more aerodynamic in a straight line by covering it, but it's too heavy side to side. And these bikes have enough power in a straight line, so you sacrifice a bit of that to have the agility. And that's what I've noticed all the bikes going, the less and less surface area on the side. If you have a look at the bikes, the front wheel pokes out on its own now, doesn't it? And there used to be a fairing right up around to the front wheel. They've got rid of all of that to try to make, because if you're coming like from 300 kilometers an hour down to 200 and then you have to turn in, the bike wants to go straight. They can't lean it over because that wind rushing down the surface, that it won't turn in, and by reducing that gap, you're making the gap bigger and reducing they said the bike's much easier to less physical, to turn in, or possible. They can do it quicker.
Like the Aprilia is the perfect example for the Aprilia is so narrow, and also the front tire is so alone there at the front that it makes perfect sense.
KTM and Honda too, when you look at it, they're all going that way.
Yeah, Honda is basically just copying Aprilia at the moment, I feel like, with the wings.
Somebody anyway, yeah.
Yeah. And we were talking a little bit about aero, and to go back to what's actually happening right now in MotoGP. I noticed that Jorge Martin has a totally different fairing than Pecco. Like Jorge Martin has this ground effect.
The lower fairing,
yeah. And it's pretty thick at the bottom. Mm-hmm. And then it has those ground effect. It's not really a Venturi kennel, but you know what I mean. No?
Yeah. Basically, the fairing goes down and gets to kind of not foot peg, middle of your leg height, just above foot peg. It goes out and then around like this. So there's a step there.
Yeah.
And
Pecco is using those, I would call them F ducts, like McLaren used them back in the day in Formula 1, where the air is pathing.
Things,
it's downdrafted, right? That's the correct term. And what's the difference? Because we saw the ground effect being used at KTM, at Aprilia, and Ducati is experimenting with it. I mean, they have the luxury of having 8 bikes, so they can try everything out and see what works for them. And could you explain what's the difference between like Jorge Martin's Ducati with the ground effect thing and Pecco's Ducati with the F duct?
So that duct that came out in, must have been 3 years ago in Qatar, we first saw them. And basically the belly pan, say the bike is traveling this way, you're looking at the fairing, the lower fairing, and it has a scoop that takes the air from the front and pushes it down. And it's pretty easy to understand looking at it. What it's doing is doing that. The air that's going forward, it's going pushing it down. One aero expert that I didn't expect this, but he's saying the air in a straight line when you're going really fast causes turbulence under the bike, and you can, by pushing air in there, you can free the bike more. He's saying it helps top speed wise. I never thought of that, but he knows much more than me. So I'm like, okay. But the effect, my job is to listen to every rider. They're not allowed to tell you what is happening, what it does, but if you take one rider, you take all of the riders from that manufacturer, listen to all of them every day, like I do. You take pieces of what they've said. He's told you one thing. but he's thinking he's giving you enough. But you put it with what he said, something in it, you get the picture of what is happening. And the Ducati made a good step forward in the area where they release the brake and into the corner, and the bike turns by itself. What Remy likes about Superbike, they improved the turning, the natural turning of the bike with this duct, and it makes sense when it's on its side, it's pushing air out the bottom, and you can imagine it's helping push the bike around. The one that stepped out, it comes down and steps out. That step gets so close to the road that they're saying it is literally ground effects. It's like a vacuum to the road because it's shaped. When the bike's leaned over, they've made the fairing bigger, so it literally follows the contour of the road when it's leaned over, super close. From what I've putting all the stories together from engineers, riders, and it sounds like this is the future. This really works. Everybody that's had it notices something, like it helps the bike turn when it's on its side. It's more heavy side to side. They say it's better on the brakes, like more stability on the brake. Maybe that little shelf, make some downforce or something. So the first answers from the Pramac guys was braking stability. But when you listen to the Pramac guys, the Aprilia guys that use it, all of them say that ground effects belly pan helps the bike turn. It's better in the corner. The KTM guys are now using it as well. So that's 3 manufacturers that have this. I think it's going to be no time at all, and we're going to see all of them with it. That's my feeling.
Do you know why Pecco isn't using the ground effect fairing?
He loves agility of the bike. He wants it light as possible, and these made it heavier. But my belief is that it is better, and they will improve it to keep Pecco happy as well, meaning for sure, they know that it's better. This is my opinion. They know it's better. Pecco don't like it because it's too heavy. Let's try and make this better thing less heavy. And the next update I'm convinced, I'd put money on it, that in the future, Pecco will have it. It will be just an updated one. That's my feeling.
So you think MotoGP in the future is going towards ground effect like F1 is doing at the moment?
Definitely.
F1 abandoned the traditional aero package, more or less. And which brings us back to the point, you can't change the aero, what you said. Like Formula One, they had the best cars ever in 2020, but then they started to reducing to make it racing better. If it worked, it's up for speculation. But the technical side drastically changed in Formula One, and now they have all ground effect cars. And if that can help also with like front tire pressure and making racing more competitive again, it should be, or it could be, a solution to go more towards ground effect motorcycles and away from those traditional downforce motorcycles.
Yeah. Again, I agree with what you said. The only thing is, I would say, to repeat, reduce the wing sizes. So you still have some good advantages, like 300 kilometers an hour at Mugello. It will still hold the bike down. But in the rest of the track, you will have less effect, less problems for overtaking. I think that's the key. I'm not saying I know the answer, but I get a feeling that's the way it will go, because it's going to be too hard to ban it. But the ground effects thing, I can't see a negative here. So,
do you have any idea why Honda hasn't come up with a ground effect thing, or like Yamaha? With Yamaha, I can somehow explain it to me, because Yamaha has always been very agile. Yamaha has always been a very smooth bike to ride. And as you said, when it makes the bike more heavy to turn, it takes away from the Yamaha's character. And that for me was always the explanation why Yamaha and Aero never really clicked too much. Tell me if I'm wrong.
No. I think the real simple answer is that it's the Europeans that have the knowledge, from what I understand and what I can see, of aero, and the Italians were straight on it. Ducati was the leader. Aprilia have really closed the gap. Aprilia are doing really well. in that area. And then you see KTM go from quite lost to pretty good now. They have more steps, but they've brought in Red Bull Advanced Technologies guys, like with a lot of knowledge, and they've made the 2 upgrades this year. They've made 2 good step forwards with Aero, but it's all European stuff from F1, and then you look at the Japanese, and they are miles behind, like years behind with the Aero development. And my opinion on why is that the Europeans are more open to going and hiring someone who's an expert from, you know what I'm saying? You guys know about Aero. Come on, come and help us. How much do you want? Come and join us. Tell us, teach us, They'll do that now. Now. They won't wait till the end of the year to do a contract. You know what I'm saying? They want to do it now, and they want to try it now. And where the Japanese want to keep it more, this is a generalization, but I've written for all the Japanese manufacturers on factory machinery. And in general, it's more in-house, It's more difficult for them, I think, culturally, to go and hire someone from another country and come and teach us how to do that. I think we are more open to doing that, And I really hope that Japanese do this, just change in that way, meaning get the European part of their factory to hire the right people. And the big thing, the next hurdle is listen to them. Let them, listen to them. Let them lead the way. Make some mistakes. Go down but try it. That is my real gut feeling on what's happening,
Yeah.
There'll be some other things that I don't know, but that's my gut feeling.
I can remember Jorge Lorenzo, Valentino Rossi, Maverick Vinales all going to Yamaha saying this is the issue, and Yamaha basically won't listen. And now, a couple years later, they're nowhere behind, and we're talking about concession points for Yamaha and Honda. So it's really bad for them. And I remember that Valentino Rossi was talking very early about all those rear grip issues Yamaha had and top speed, but Yamaha, it looked like from the outside they just did it their way, and if it didn't work their way, then well, fuck. But they are now stuck in a hole where they can't dig themselves out. Apparently, they should get concession points, at least Yamaha, in my opinion, because the difference, in my opinion, with the concession points, and I really would love to see what you think about this, or hear what you think about this, is Honda won a race. And Honda did a very, very successful weekend in Austin. And Honda has a problem of rideability, and it's not like with engine power or testing whatsoever. I feel like with Honda, there's so much chaos, but they won a race. So why should they get concessions? While Yamaha, they are nowhere. They don't have a customer team where they can try things out. Like, for example, with a setup or what you said about electronics, when you have 8 bikes on the grid, or for the sake of it, 4 bikes, the probability of you finding the solution is twice or like 4 times as high as when you only have 2 bikes on the grid. So I think Yamaha definitely needs a satellite team, and Yamaha definitely needs concessions. But yeah, with Honda, I don't know. I mean, they won a race, and it always has been like, you win a race, you lose your concessions.
The problem is, I don't know all the answers here, but this is how I see it, okay? Is that Honda and Yamaha are in so much trouble right now. I mean, they have a lot of knowledge, a lot, but right now they've got behind with all these, what we're talking about. I think it's, let's start with the problems first, okay? I think the Europeans have figured out how to make the bike so smooth, because that's what I felt when I rode them. I've ridden all the European ones, They're more open-minded to even me having a ride on the bike, So I've ridden those bikes. They deliver the power so smoothly. I'm like, wow, it's like silky smooth to not break the traction, you know? When you look at Honda were a little bit slow engine-wise a year or two back, and they've improved it. Yamaha, Fabio was complaining last couple of years, need more power. He got more power and has made the bike worse, you know? It's actually lost some of the positive points because you need it to deliver so smooth, not to break traction, not to make instability. They have too much power. The problem is getting it to the ground, you know? 300 horsepower, roughly, maybe more. I don't know. But it's not just having more power, it's having it the right delivery. And a really clever engineer told me, I put him right up there, you know, he told me, Simon, it's 80% of your grip was his number. 80% of your grip comes from the engine's character. If the character is not right, you can't fix it with the chassis or with the electronics, you know? So you need to get 80% of it with the delivery, you know, mechanically how it makes it, you know, and then help it with the electronics and chassis. But if it's wrong, you won't fix it. And that, to me, is the answer with the Japanese manufacturers. You know, when it comes to, you said about rear grip, Yamaha talking about, or I think Honda is the same thing. That's my opinion. Then to a varying degrees, the two of them, you know, but that's my opinion of what's happening this year with Fabio, you know. For example, Honda is the only is the most screamer engine left now. All the rest have gone quite extreme, big bang, you know, and the Honda's the only one still sounding like it does, you know. So the KTM used to sound last year like the Honda. They've made a step forward this year, haven't they? You know, they've gone more big bang. You can hear it. So bigger gaps between firing orders, you know, give smoother power delivery. So there's all of that. Then there's the aero, you know, that we already spoke. What I'm saying is the Japanese are in trouble right now. If they are not allowed to test and update and change, they're going to get so far behind that we have a risk of losing them from the championship. And nobody wants that, you know? So when you put all that information together, you go, we have to help them, you know? Not me, but basically everyone has to get together and agree to help them so we don't lose them from the championship. Because I can say it from a rider's point of view, my best result that I'm most proud of is not just the result, it's who's standing below me on the podium. And it's the same for manufacturers. They don't want to win a world championship and there's no Japanese manufacturers in there. It's not the same, you know? So that's why, when you put all that together, that's why I believe, you know, all I try and do with my job is listen to everything, everybody, and with my 54 years of age, you know, and experience of in the paddock. And that's what I believe is it's not about if you've won a race. That race was won in Austin by Alex Rins, not by Honda. Alex would have won on anything, you know. He was just better. He was awesome. Okay, Pecco, if he'd stayed on, you know, because Pecco's level and machine. But in the end, the best guy there was Alex Rins, and that's the only reason that the Honda won that one. If we look at the big picture, they need help. And the help is not giving them something except a bit of freedom to update their bike to be competitive again, so they want to come to the race. That's all it is. Because right now the restrictions on testing and updates are so hard that they're not going to get out of the hole without a little bit of freedom to allow them out of the hole, you know. The big thing about all this is I feel really sorry for Aprilia and for KTM because they are the two big movers in the last 2 years. And they did it through like tenacity and the right way of thinking, and hiring the right people and learning and investing. It would have cost them a lot of money to get to where they are. And then right when they're at the point of, capitalizing on that, then they, I imagine, are getting asked to give some of their biggest oppositions a leg up. That must be hard to swallow because they've done it by the rules, and that's my whole thought.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
KTM and Aprilia did it through concessions.
but
And
no,
back
Aprilia,
then,
but KTM have done it out of concessions.
yes, you are right. I mean, KTM, when did they lose their concessions? In 2020, 2021?
Yeah, and the bike was still not right. It was just the riders did an amazing job, and then they lost the concessions because of it. You're like,
yeah, you're right on KTM when you consider how bad they were in 2022. And I mean, KTM, they hired basically all the Ducati engineers. They hired Jack Miller, and they got the help from F1 and got the whole Red Bull backing there.
But
so
that is investing in making the right decisions. Yeah. Really, it's nothing else.
They basically did the same in Moto2 back then when they had the Joan Zarco-Ayo combination with the WP suspensions. They get all the data and basically built a Kalex with KTM on it in 2017. And
you know more about that. I wasn't in the paddock watching Moto2 then.
Yeah, I've been told by somebody who works somewhere in Moto2. I believe he works for Kalex, but I don't know anymore. But he told me that KTM back then had the WP suspensions at Ayu's team with Joan Zarco, and they get all the data. And then they built the KTM Moto2 chassis based on that data. And you could even fit parts from the Kalex on the KTM because it was so similar. And then Kalex was so pissed that nobody in Moto2 is using WP suspensions anymore on the Kalex. So if WP, aka KTM, wants to go back into Moto2, they need to do it like with Boscoscuro or with Forward. But because on no Kalex on a Moto2 grid, you see a WP suspension because
I'll have to ask about
sick
that.
of KTM.
It's a good story. I'm going to dig about that one to hear it firsthand.
Also, what this taught me is that I don't fully trust the steel frame because everything was the same except for the steel frame. Kalex used the aluminium frame and KTM used the steel frame in Moto2. And I mean, in MotoGP, we basically, up until this season, KTM really surprised me this season, we saw little to no success consistently from KTM. They had very, very good races. I remember Miguel Oliveira almost beating Marc Marquez in Germany and how good he was in Catalonia. In 2021, or like Brad Binder and Bruno
as well.
Brad Binder and Bruno, or this
but
miracle
not consistent.
But KTM never was consistently on the podium or even in the top 5 over a whole season. And I'm very surprised KTM kind of figured this thing out. They're more consistent now, even though I don't know if it's KTM being more consistent or Honda and Yamaha not being there anymore. So I don't know.
KTM have definitely made a step forward because if you compare race times from the whole season and at tracks with the same tires, as the year before, and they're like, it's crazy how much faster.
Yeah.
The race time it's more than 10 seconds over race distance faster. You're going like, wow, they've made a good step forward.
And which brings us a little bit back to Honda and Yamaha, because KTM, as you said, they built a new engine, they built a new aero package basically over the winter. The whole thing is different now. And with the right amount of investment, Honda and Yamaha should be able to do the same, even without the concessions. But I still think that the concessions would be a good thing, even in return that Yamaha and Honda back then gave those new manufacturers, or even Ducati, the concession points. I mean, when we talk about 2011, 2012, Honda could have said, well, fuck you, you don't get anything from us, but they were willing to work with Ducati back then, and then introducing Aprilia, Suzuki, and
It's a
KTM to
very
the.
good point, because it wasn't just concessions. They helped in other ways. I'm even told a motorcycle was allowed to go to them, so they can, like,
This is interesting.
hey, because back when this is also why I haven't even mentioned Ducati, like feeling sorry for them or whatever, because I imagine Ducati are on top of the pile right now. They got helped to be in there. Like, the Japanese wanted them in, because for the same reason I was saying before, you need to beat other manufacturers if you're going to be a champion. You need other manufacturers in there. They helped Ducati, I'm told, quite significantly. And meaning friendly help. Come on, encouragement. And it's understandable now. Ducati's top of the pile, that they would say, yeah, sure, okay, fair enough. I'm going to give you help back. I don't feel anything wrong there. But it's why I said the other manufacturers I do feel a bit sorry for, because they never got to win yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A championship anyway, or fight all the way for it. But what I'm saying is, it's, yeah. Sorry, you said it. It's perfect. It's only fair that there is, another way to put it is, the concessions have got a bit outdated, meaning how they're applied, because we've seen that someone like Alex Rins doing a blinder, something magic, can take away a manufacturer's concessions when really they need them. So the concessions need to be applied, I think, in a little bit different way, for it to make the future of the sport, the bikes, more even. That
But how do you do that? I mean, when you have a
it's not my
measurement
job,
like
mate.
victories, second, it used to be, or it is right now, when you get, I believe, over 2 seasons, not one victory, or not two second places, or not three third places, then you get concessions. So I think the whole 2 year stretch is outdated. That's true. But how do you do it when you don't take those results into consideration? Do you say, okay, you need 2 wins? Do you need 3 wins? How much value has a win right now? Because it used to be on a calendar with 16, 17, 18 races. And now we have a calendar with over 20, if anything happens for once. So how much is a victory even worth now when you talk about concessions,
Look, because it's not my job, I haven't thought deeply about this. It's not my job, So you sounds like you've thought about it more than me, how it should be applied. But I do look. The thing is, someone like Honda has the budget to buy the best rider, for example, and the same thing you could say for Yamaha, and that best rider will make the bike look better than it really is. And that's why I think they need to be applied in a different way. Where Aprilia coming in, they're never going to have the budget to buy the best rider and convince them to ride their bike that's still on concessions. You know what I'm saying? Or so, yeah. I mean, I'm only looking at the practical side. I don't know how it's going to be applied. And like I said, the guys who it is that job, they're going to be talking with the manufacturers to try and figure this out. But I don't want the championship to be without Honda. I mean,
yeah.
hey, the thing is, at the end of the day, is that it just proves. I've always said, I've learnt this over the years. It doesn't matter if you're a rider, a team, a championship, a manufacturer, or a country. The moment you think you're better, you're in trouble. You're losing that hunger to keep going forward. And I believe I've seen that with Honda over the last years. Is
Yeah.
instead of being, I mean, I walk around in pit lane all the time, and you see how hungry for example, KTM, and they're the biggest movers over the last year, KTM and Aprilia. And those guys will talk to me and go, "Have you seen anything new? Like we're having a play with this. We can't tell you exactly how it works, but we're having a." They are so hungry. They're so willing to take ideas from anywhere. Where the Japanese way, especially Honda, I would say top of the pile, is they're so busy covering up their bikes so you don't copy anything over. They're not even looking at what or asking me what I've seen in pit lane. You know what I'm saying? They're like, I watch every garage where and if somebody comes to me and goes, "We're going to put it on," I'm going to tell everybody on the air. It's no secret what I've seen. So there's no reason why their engineer won't say, "What have you seen? So why do you reckon they're doing that?" And I like with these other manufacturers, I go, "Well, I've seen this, but I don't know why do you think why they would be doing that?" And they will tell me something so interesting from an engineer's point of view. All I'm trying to say is that's what I have seen happening. Is the hungry ones are going forward.
Yeah.
The open mind, humility, open mind. Whatever it takes.
Yeah, and arguably Honda hasn't been competitive since 2017 when you take out Marc Marquez.
Yeah.
When you take out Marc Marquez out of this equation with what happened in 2020, exactly this happened, but just in 2017, Dani Pedrosa wasn't competitive. In 18, Dani Pedrosa wasn't competitive. Jorge Lorenzo was nowhere near where he should be. In 2020, Alex Marquez had like 2 good races, but I mean, Honda always had like the
And
one
all of
win.
those people would be able to give you something very valuable.
Yeah.
Ducati, for example, they told me, this is like a really clever engineer, said he's part of the development stuff, going to testing. He told me that Jorge Lorenzo was extreme when it came to ergonomics. Extreme. Like I got the feeling that he drove them crazy, with what most people would say pedantic little, but he said it was really valuable because when we gave what he liked to other riders, they didn't even realize that it was a problem. They went, "Oh, that's good," because they're so busy trying to go fast. He's so busy trying to be comfortable before he goes fast that these things worked. And what I'm saying is they listened, they listened and they got that information and used it, where I think the others fall down on that.
Yeah, I remember in 2018, before Jorge Lorenzo started this 2-race winning streak, he was harassing Ducati to give him a new tank where he could position his legs better.
Mm-hmm.
And once they did this, he won 2 races, but then it was already too late and he was gone for Honda.
Yeah, sorry, the contract was,
Yeah. And
hey,
I'm sorry. I still believe that if he stayed with Ducati, he wouldn't have beaten Marquez in 2019, but he would have been world champion in 2020. I'm very, very optimistic about this, but
we'll never know. Yeah, exactly.
we'll never know.
Hey, I've got something very controversial to tell you that it just came into my mind, but it's my opinion. Because you said about the Honda not being competitive since 2017 or something, really, truly like one of the best bikes.